Another win for the Seattle Torrent, their second regulation win. Ava Wood joins me again on the 206 Sports Collective to break this one down, what we liked, what needs to be improved upon. And then we're also going to talk Rivalry Series and close out once again with our power rankings. If we're meeting or if you're hearing me for the first time, Erica L Ayala here, your host of the 206 Sports Collective, which is a part of Black Rosie Media, where we empower Black women and melanated creators in sports media. I have over 10 years, if you can even believe it, looking at this skin, of women's hockey experience, and will be making my way to Italy for my second Winter Olympics. Ava Wood, of course, is the creator behind 365 Hockey Girl, creating such a great community among women's hockey lovers, everything from heated rivalry to hockey Barbies and everything in between. Ava, we have to talk about another Seattle Torrent win. You were in the building once again. What stood out to you in this 4-1 win over the Ottawa Charge?
Yeah, I mean, this game felt so different from the other games just because they got that goal at the end of the first period, and then from there on, they had the lead, right? Mm-hmm. And their first win at home, it was like they were losing the whole time, right?
Right.
So, for most of that game until the very end. So the vibes in the building were definitely different.
100%. You mentioned that. A late goal in the first period by Julia Gosling. It's her third goal of the season, assisted by Bilka and Carpenter. It was a power play goal also, which we love to see. And it would not be the only power play goal for Seattle. Carpy would score one of her 2 goals on the power play in the second period, and then get the her second goal in about halfway through the second period. Rebecca Leslie was the only player to score for Ottawa. And, you know, I think there were a few other things that we saw in this game. We saw once again Hannah Murphy in net. And we also saw the return of Aneta Terelova. First, let's talk about Hannah Murphy. Are we maybe seeing a jockey for the number 1 spot in Seattle?
I'm not sure. I mean, we signed Corrine Schroeder in that initial signing window. So, I mean, I think she's going to be an important part of this piece. I don't know if we'll see Hannah Murphy fully take that starting position, but I think what we could see is more of a tandem like what they're doing over with Minnesota Frost. And if we can divide that time between Murphy and Schroeder more evenly, that's a huge plus for this team, right?
I agree.
With the travel. Like, honestly, I think a lot of people are looking at this situation and being like, oh no, poor Schroeder, like this isn't ideal. But when I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is even better than I expected.
I love that take because it is something that with Rachel Donner, who joins me weekly, and we'll have another episode on Saturday talking women's hockey, or you and I talking, like you said, that tandem in Minnesota has been very noticeable compared to the rest of the field, where it's usually one dominant goaltender and maybe every once in a while we'll get another starter. I mean, Gwyneth Phillips in Ottawa is the starting netminder because she took the net over after Emryn Smashmeyer got that injury. But, it's rare that we get to see 2 goaltenders getting early playing time. So I love this approach, quite honestly, from Seattle. I think you're absolutely right that it's not necessarily like a poor Corrine Schroeder, but we've seen now Hannah Murphy against, at the time, a New York Sirens team that was absolutely an offensive powerhouse. And now we've seen her in net against a team in Ottawa that can score in bunches, and but they don't always score in bunches. And so she's gotten to see a little bit across the field, if you will, when it comes to what to expect. And I love this because then you get to now, as Steve O'Rourke, pick and choose, perhaps matchup to matchup, what you want, because you're seeing good goaltending from both of your netminders. Now, I will always say that I want to make sure CJ is a part of that as well, because I do think there is a world in which you can have a Carly Jackson just continue to diversify what you get in net. But we'll take it with Murphy and Schroeder. Aneta Terelova coming back, I think, is huge. One, I think it bodes well for her and anything that we might see come February at the Olympics. We know that Team Czechia will be there as part of the women's tournament. But also it's good for this Sirens team because, as I've said before, defensively, sometimes they get a little lost. Their bad habits eke out every once in a while. And so someone like Teralova can really help anchor this team defensively. But let's talk about the offense. Obviously, they win the game. But I do think it's interesting that we're still seeing this be a team that has kind of a low amount of shots on goal. They actually got outshot 13-7 in the first frame alone. They were held to single-digit shots, Seattle was, throughout every period of this game, but still get the win. So you love that. But are you a little concerned about the shot output? Is that something that you think Coach O'Rourke wants to see more of from this team?
It's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially in that first period. Torrent took 2 penalties. The momentum was very much on Ottawa Chargers' side. And yeah, that first frame, excuse me, that first frame was not the Torrent's best. As far as like 5-on-5 scoring, that's definitely something that this team needs to work on.
Yes, 100%. Again, we already talked about they got 2 power play goals here. But I love that special teams is coming along because that wasn't always the case. I think another thing that we can talk about here, this is the Seattle Torrent Focus podcast. And what did you see from Ottawa here?
Who really jumped off the ice to me was Brianne Jenner. She was like, I'm making that Olympic roster. And especially in that first period, I felt like Ottawa Charge, they had their looks, but it was also one of those situations where they're coming off a back-to-back, and I feel like there was that pressure on them to make something happen in the first period. And if they had made something happen in that first period, this would have been a completely different game.
Again, this is an Ottawa team that can absolutely score in bunches. I think you're right, Jenner, and we're going to talk about the Rivalry Series coming up, but some people do have Jenner on the outside looking in, which I think is an interesting take, not one that I personally have, but I do also think that Hockey Canada has had an interesting way of approaching the Rivalry Series, so we'll talk about that shortly. But yeah, I think this is an Ottawa team that they're not an expansion team, and yet they were impacted greatly by expansion. And I think that while we've seen Boston figure it out, while New York has kind of just really taken we're going to go with young blood through the draft kind of mentality, Ottawa, I think, they're in a position where they shouldn't have to rely on young up-and-coming talent only, but also the talent that they have, the veteran talent that they have. I'm not sure they're integrating and collaborating, and the cohesion is not exactly where they want it to be, or maybe even where it should be.
Specifically for this team right now, you're looking at Emily Clark to score, and she hasn't scored, and then you're looking at Gabby Hughes with the injury. So those are like 2 stars that they would have expected to be producing for them that aren't right now.
That's true. Yeah. And Clarkie getting going is huge, especially as you said, without Hughes. I always love shouting out Katarzyna Mrazova. Unfortunately, couldn't finish out last season, didn't play much of last season with an injury. So I think this is an opportunity, and she has to be able to seize that opportunity also for Ottawa. So she's another player who, as much as I love her game, it sometimes is a little bit of a slow burn for her to get going. But Ottawa really... It feels, I know it's still early in the season, and yet it feels like for Ottawa, you want them to show you sooner rather than later.
Yeah, the thing with Ottawa is that, like, when I say, teams are cooked, it's not like Ottawa can't win games. It's just that at this point, when you have when you string these losses together, especially with the 6-point scoring system, that just puts you in a hole that is hard to get out of. So it's not a matter of whether they can win games. They can win games. It's just based on the results so far, it's going to be an uphill battle for them.
100%. And we saw them dig themselves out of that hole last season, in fairness. So they absolutely can do it. But should they have to work that hard? If they didn't have to work that hard last season, could they maybe have had a different result in the fight? We never know, right? That's why we talk about it. We don't actually know how it could have played out, but these are storylines and things to keep an eye on as we move forward. Speaking of moving forward, we're going to keep the conversation moving forward by talking about rivalry series. Now, I love this term, the youths are always teaching me things. Now I'm on the other side of the trends. So you got to teach me things. But, the idea of being cooked. We talked about this with Hockey Canada, and we're like, are they cooked? You and I were like, absolutely not. Troy Ryan's like, listen, we're going to take it serious when we come to Canada. We're going to be in Edmonton. We're going to have our vets back. And we're like, surely they will get it together. Well, that first game, Ava, was not pretty. Second game was better, but they lost both.
Both games weren't pretty to me because my thing with the Canada-US game is they market it as, every game's going to go to overtime. This is going to be an evenly matched game.
Yeah, best on best or whatever, yeah.
Best on best. And what we saw, it never felt like Canada could have won the game to me. There was times where they were fighting, but it never felt to me like they were in control. It always felt like USA was in control. And when I say they're cooked, it's not like when I look at the players that they have, it's not like Canada doesn't have good players. I'm talking about the actual team, watching the team play. It's not on the same level of what USA is right now.
No, I think that's fair. And, there was a lot of conversation on whether in the first game of this last, couple of games, whether having Chloe Primerano as a healthy scratch for that game was the reason that they lost. What was it, 10-4? Holy cannoli. But, then we see Chloe suit up for game 2 and Canada still loses. So the question becomes, who did a better job of infusing the youths? It seems that the answer right now is USA. And Abby Murphy has been, I know you say cooked, but what we used to say is cooking. She's cooking up. She can cook.
She's cooking Canada.
I see what you did there. She is cooking Canada. And listen, I know that USA fans are like, hey, in 2 months, roast away Abby Murphy. She has been a scoring threat throughout the entire rivalry series. She sets up really well with her line. I think Layla Edwards game after game is showing her versatility. For those who are not familiar with Layla Edwards, she plays at the University of Wisconsin. And when she plays with her NCAA team, she's a forward. She's 6'1" is she? Something like that. 6 foot, 6'1". She's 6 foot, an attacking player. She's a forward. And on Team USA, Ava, she's a 6'1" defender. So a lot of people felt that she needed to move to defense to be able to crack this USA Olympic roster. What I'm seeing is, I don't even know if that's true. I think she could probably and should still make the team, even if she was playing primarily as a forward, because she hops up in the offense very well. And if she's a forward, I think, Ava, at any time for USA Hockey, then she becomes one of the top scoring options and not just a top facilitator and a setup woman for other people. And I think that could be hella lethal. So I'm very curious to see if she stays defense only or if maybe she becomes interchangeable. But yeah, Abby Murphy, Layla Edwards, who are some other players where you're like, yeah, they absolutely stood out? I mean, Hillary Knight, we have to talk about Hillary Knight. It's a Seattle Torrent podcast. Hillary Knight also, right, was able to get a Hattie throughout this series, has been able to, of course, light the lamp. Who else has stood out to you?
Honestly, Frankel and Phillips. Because you can look at Canada and say, they have Davian, they have Mashmeyer, but ultimately, Davian and Mashmeyer got 10 goals combined scored on them in that one game. I don't think Davian's had the rivalry series that she wanted to have, unfortunately. Yeah, both teams have great goaltending, but Frankel and Phillips, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with you, which is why we have to now play a little bit of a game here, Ava, and predict who is in and who is out. I think who's in come Milan, or Milano, as the natives would say, is Abby Murphy, Layla Edwards, Taylor Heisey, and Gwyneth Phillips. Those are like my non-negotiable as far as first timers, right? We can talk about some veterans as well who maybe are on the bubble and things of that nature.
Why am I doing Taylor Heisey's been there forever?
But she hasn't, which is wild. Okay. Yeah.
Heisey.
Yeah, Heisey, I think, is someone, obviously. Now, as far as bubble players, if you say you like what Frankel has done and you like what Phillips has done, that means one, if not both, Rooney and Hensley are not making this roster.
Rooney and Hensley aren't making the roster. Definitely. I think they definitely bring in McNaughton. I mean, I don't even, no shade to my girl Maddie Rooney because I love her. I don't think she's even on their radar at this point. And then Nicole Hensley has actually looked great this PWHL season, but the way that Team USA reads to me is they're not really changing things. They're not really, I don't think they're even looking at like recent events to like decide. I think they already know who they're going to bring, unfortunately for Nicole Hensley. And as you mentioned, they've been prioritizing working youth into this roster. So why not bring an Ava McNaughton?
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with you. And knowing USA Hockey, I wouldn't be surprised if a veteran finds their way on the roster in some way, shape, or form. But maybe this is a new turning of a new leaf. I personally would love to see it, but I also wouldn't be surprised if somehow one of the three I'll say it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if the three goaltenders are not Frankel, Phillips, and McNaughton. I would be 100% surprised if Phillips and Frankel are not part of the three goaltenders, is I guess what I'm saying. I think McNaughton, if someone has to go, it's McNaughton. I don't really know that I have a read on whether it's Rooney or Hensley. I think historically for me, I might actually lean on Rooney, but what you said is also valid. Like, is that what USA is thinking? I guess we'll find out. But so other players, though, I mean, Hillary Knight makes this roster. Carpy makes this roster. I think a bubble player or maybe someone who I really don't think she had a bad rivalry series. And I don't think Haley Scamara goes to her first Olympics. I don't think, I think some people have thrown out Lee Steckline as someone who might not make this Olympic roster. I don't agree with that. I think Lee Steckline makes this Olympic roster.
I mean, she brings so much not only on the ice, but off the ice. I don't think it's possible to not include her.
I agree. I will say, first of all, I believe it was our good friend Brian, right, who brought this to my attention because, I ranted about the fact that we had to endure Megan Bozak wearing a Hockey Canada jersey. It does seem like there was some reciprocity, right? And we did see Sammy Jo Small in a Team USA jersey. But what I found interesting is that Bozak and Sammy Jo were having a conversation, of course, about the Hockey Canada roster during the Rivalry Series broadcast. And they felt that maybe Natalie Spooner doesn't make the Hockey Canada Olympic roster. And that, to me, not just based on Rivalry Series, but based on Natalie Spooner's breadth of work, including in the last two PWHL seasons, like, is Spooner the problem? To me, the answer is no.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that because obviously she was the best player in the PWHL in the first season, and then she suffers that injury, and then in the second season, I mean, obviously she was working through injury. I think coming into the beginning of this season, we still aren't seeing 2024 prime Spooner yet.
That's fair.
And maybe. I mean, Troy Ryan is her coach, right? So he probably has the most insight onto her as a player. So unfortunately, maybe she doesn't. I don't know.
That would be tough. Someone else who I think time might be an issue is, we saw Watts come back, right? So that's good. But Sarah Nurse, I'm a little concerned. for Sarah Nurse.
I'm also extremely concerned. for her.
Now, in fairness, some may not know because we were dealing with COVID at the time, but Sarah Nurse had a pretty significant injury that she was rehabilitating ahead of the 2022 Winter Olympics, where she was a key player for Hockey Canada and actually got bumped up to the top line with MPP because of her ability to shift, from the wing to the center position. So we've seen her mount a pretty significant comeback before, but that was also 4 years ago. And the recovery timeline didn't include having to play in a professional league. The PWHPA was still working, but it was more of the barnstorming kind of weekend schedule, and they were working around the Olympic schedule or the residency schedule. Not the case here. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned for Nursey. I did find it interesting that Megan Bozak thought that Hannah Miller makes this roster because she does get the exemption or she gets cleared by IIHF. I don't see that happening, if I'm being honest, before this Olympics.
I don't either, just considering I don't think they had her in the lineup in the past 2 Rivalry Series games.
No, I don't really know what the process is there, but it seems like it's been moving at a glacial pace, to say the least. And it just seems like, I don't know. I for Hannah's sake, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a larger conversation with like changing federations, but we see it in soccer. So it's not unprecedented in sport. And I mean, I don't know. It's definitely interesting for sure. I don't know if I agree that Hannah Miller makes this roster. I have concerns about Nursey, but yeah. But let's move on here to our power rankings, Ava. Now, last week we had Boston, Montreal, Minnesota, Sirens, the New York Sirens, Toronto, Scepters, Ottawa, and then Vancouver and Seattle, which we kind of interchanged, with 7 and 8. I do think the rankings are different. Top 2 teams for me are probably the same, but things definitely shifted after that.
Wait, sorry. I'm just reading these rankings again.
So my suggested rankings for this week, based on the games between our last power rankings and this rankings, would be Boston 1, Montreal 2, Vancouver at 3, Seattle at 4, Minnesota 5, Toronto 6, Sirens at 7, and Ottawa at 8. And I base that on the last handful of games. Vancouver has won 2 games since we last recorded. Ottawa has dropped 2 games, I believe. New York has dropped 1 game. Seattle has earned a game. They won a game. And so for me, that's how I shift the power rankings, because we've seen teams who haven't been able to get wins in Vancouver get wins. Toronto has kind of struggled. They haven't gotten the wins. And then I also looked at goal differential. I think Vancouver is on the uptick. So do I think that they are the 3rd place team? No, that's not what I'm saying. I do think that their performance, though, within the last week has bumped them up comparative to the rest of the field.
I agree that Vancouver should be bumped up, not just for their game results, but also due to Kristen Campbell's performance in the win against Ottawa Charge, because that was one of the reasons I kind of had them lower, was because in Campbell's first start, it wasn't her best, but she showed that good soup versus Ottawa. So that's when I was like, uh-oh, Vancouver's scary if they have Campbell and Mashmeyer both going. So I, as a Seattle fan, I don't want Vancouver to be high, but I have to give it to them that they deserve to be pushed up.
Yeah. And again, I think Vancouver 3, Seattle 4, Seattle 3, Vancouver 4, either way. But for me, I do think within this confined week, since the last time we spoke on the other side of the Rivalry Series and the international break, that Vancouver and Seattle have had significantly better weeks than Minnesota, Toronto, New York, and Ottawa. I think, I mean, are you going to argue with me at all about Ottawa in 8, especially based on, okay, so we're good there. So then,
Unfortunately, I don't want Ottawa to be an 8.
Neither do I. I've had a soft spot in my heart for Ottawa since jump, and it just hasn't always panned out. So we agree that Ottawa's an 8. Now, I do think between Minnesota, Toronto, and New York, I could be convinced to kind of jumble these for 5, 6, 7. But right now, for me, I have Minnesota at 5, Toronto at 6, and the Sirens at 7.
Unfortunately, Sirens stock is falling a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the stat that was standing out to me, I don't know if this has changed since I last checked it, but it was that they hadn't scored on the power play yet.
Oh, still?
Maybe they have now. Yeah, maybe something changed.
No, I think you're right. That definitely was a stat. I didn't check it before we recorded, so I think you're probably right. But if that's still the thing, like if that's still a thing, if special teams are still an issue, they're gonna have to fix that. Like they're gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah. I feel comfortable with the rest of that ranking. I don't know if you put Torrent above Sirens at this point, though.
Okay, that's okay. I still would because of the week that they had. Sirens did not have a great week.
Right.
And see, this is where I think power rankings are interesting because I don't do power rankings as like cumulative. I do them week to week.
I agree.
So
week to week, but I factor in like a little bit.
You probably factor it in more than I do. So so what would you change in the rankings that I suggested? You would flip Seattle and New York?
Wait, no, I agree with Seattle above New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have Seattle at 4, Minnesota at 5, Toronto at 6, New York Sirens at 7, and Ottawa at 8.
Oh, I don't know if Seattle is better than Toronto and Minnesota yet.
Okay, and see that's where like the weighted versus singularly. Okay, so if you were to consider, and I think this is great, like that's why I love having the conversation with you. So tell me if you were considering everything, not just the last week, because that's what I did, but if you're considering everything, what would your rankings be? Is it still Boston 1?
Yeah, still Boston 1,
Montreal 2. Okay.
Then Minnesota, then Toronto, then Seattle, then New York,
then Vancouver,
then Ottawa.
Okay.
I'm basically just moving Seattle down.
That's fair. No, I think that's fair. Because I do think they still have a lot to prove. We kind of talked about that at the top of the show. I think that's good.
I think, like, obviously their win against Ottawa was really good, but I'm just not 100% sold on it because I'm like, Ottawa was a little bit of, like, not the strongest. No shade. They were coming off of a back-to-back. They were a little bit, like, the easiest team to beat at the time.
No, that's fair. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's take a look, though, at the upcoming schedule, Ava. And I want to take a look at the Torrent schedule because obviously this is a Seattle podcast. But when you look at who the Torrent have coming up, so we are recording on the 18th. So we have, of course, Seattle hosting on Sunday. They're hosting Boston. That's going to be a huge test. And then, guess what? Who comes into town right before, Holly Jolly, old St. Nick starts flying all across the world, Montreal. And then they will travel to the East Coast to the Midwest because this is one of the takeover games. But they close out December in Dallas playing New York. I mean, that's huge. The 21st and the 23rd at Climate Pledge Arena. It was over 9,000 fans to see Ottawa. We need at least that many fans to show up at CPA to root on this Seattle Torrent team because they're about to take on the top 2 teams.
Agreed. And that's what's great about these power rankings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now even Boston and Montreal are the teams to beat. And
they are
the real test for this team.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. Okay, so here's the thing. We talked about maybe an equitable split in net. Do you think we see both goaltenders? across the next 3 games, or do you give it to one versus the other?
I think it depends on, honestly, if they start Murphy, it depends on how she does, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think with both of these games being at home, I think one of them should go to Schroeder, just because from fan perspective, everybody already knows what Hannah Murphy can do, and the fans haven't seen Schroeder be Schroeder yet.
And get a win, yeah.
They haven't seen Schroeder win yet. They haven't seen shutout Schroeder. So I would love for Schroeder to get a game, and just get some of that confidence. And
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Now, which game you give to one versus the other? Here's the thing. You need good goaltending against Boston. They are stingy. They are so stingy when it comes to saving up goals. If we look at the standings, right, and we look at the goals for, goals against, Boston has 13 goals for. They've scored 13 goals. Aaron Frankel and the Boston Fleet in 5 games, Ava, have given up 2 goals. Not per game. 2 goals, period.
That's crazy. That's crazy stat. Wow.
So you talk about shutout Schroeds. I'm leaning towards giving Schroeder the Boston game.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good.
With a short leash if needed. So you probably are going to dress Murphy anyway. But I think you give Schroeder that Boston game. Now, Montreal is no picnic either. Now, they're an interesting team because they do not score a lot. So they have yet to reach double digits in goals for, just 9 goals. But they also give up the second fewest amount of goals per game. So in 4 games, they've only given up 4 goals. So that would be 1 per game. So that's still a high bar to reach. And I think it's one that either goaltender can handle. But I almost like the idea of a team, at least statistically, and these are small sample size. We've only got 5 to 7 games, I think, for any given team. Small sample size is what I'm saying here. But I think I like what the game against Montreal could be a little bit better for Murphy's game. And I like what the game against Boston could be a little bit more for Schroeder's game.
I can see that. I mean, yeah, no matter which goalie we put in, they can win the game.
100%.
Which is a great thing about these 2 goalies.
Exactly. And we love to see it. We love to see it in Seattle. Then getting New York again. Now, can't bank on a 5-minute major and, a 5-minute power play again. I do think these 2 teams have gone through a lot since they saw each other. They're going to be neutral site for both teams in Dallas. Okay, this is a little bit of an aside, not a technical X's and O's question. What were your thoughts on Kayla Barnes walking the tunnel with a Dallas Stars jersey in Climate Pledge Arena where the Kraken play? Excuse me. They beat us in our second ever season in the second round of the playoffs in 7 games. I don't know that I'm not mad, but I didn't appreciate it either.
Honestly, I think there's a lot of PWHL fans that are new hockey fans. They probably don't even have that context.
You're right. They're just like, "Ooh, okay, she's got her name on the jersey. Like, love it." And of course, promoting the single site game. I was just like, okay, as someone who has hosted a Seattle Kraken podcast for the last 5 seasons, I was like, girl, okay, wait, but do we have to like, you could have waited to wear that when we were in CPA, you know what I'm saying? But I think you're right. There's PW fans that don't have that. And usually I don't. I'm new to the men's hockey. And I probably wouldn't have picked it up or flagged it if it was literally any other team or any other arena. But I was like, okay, that was a choice. I don't know if I would have made it, but it was a choice.
There's probably a lot of other people that clock that. I don't know.
Let us know in the comments. Am I the only one? Do you not care? Let us know how you feel. I was just like, okay, I mean, do you, boo? It wouldn't have been me. And like a CPA or a Seattle photographer had to take that photo. I was like, think of the people, Kayla. No, but jokes aside, which of these 3 games for the Torrent are you most excited for and why?
Oh, it has to be Boston.
Ooh.
It has to be Boston, purely because if Boston wins against Minnesota on Friday, they will be undefeated, and then it will be up to ex-Fleet Hillary Knight to defeat.
Ooh.
Like, that would be such a good storyline. Come on.
Ooh, you're right. That's hella good stuff right there. I like the Montreal game because I think that we get to prove, the Seattle Torrent will get to prove if the 4 goals in one game was singular or if it's something that they can produce more consistently. Scoring, shots on goal, I think are still a little bit of a concern. And they're going to have to be very offensive minded against a stingy Montreal. Now, Boston's stingy as well, but Montreal, their game is a little bit, it's maybe not as in your face. And so I do think that sometimes the Seattle Torrent can get kind of lulled to sleep a little bit. They lose focus a little bit. And the Montreal team, they can play that kind of slow and steady game. And then before you know it, they scored 3 goals. And you're like, wait, wasn't it just 0-0? So Montreal can do that. They are very comfortable at a slower pace and then immediately kick it up to like a million notches because they have the talent and the skating talent specifically. Oh, and not to mention someone known as, Captain Clutch in Marie-Philippe Poulin. So yeah, I think for me and what I want to see more of from the Seattle Torrent offense, the Montreal game is going to be very intriguing to me.
I agree. And I mean, both of these teams are built so differently, as you mentioned, right? The Boston team, it's more of like the young players and like they have the depth. Every line is attacking, whereas like Montreal is a little bit more of like the top end talent. You got to figure out how to shut down those players.
100%. As you were breaking that down, I was like, okay, so basically what you're saying is Boston is Team USA and Montreal is Hockey Canada. Indeed. Well, we're going to leave it there for now. Always a pleasure to have Ava Wood, 365 Hockey Girl, doing such amazing work in the women's hockey space. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you again for joining us, our weekly chat about the Seattle Torrent. And of course, we have to say, we know it's the holiday season. We've got folks that are celebrating Hanukkah already. We've got Christmas and Kwanzaa coming up, the new year, all of the things. So, I just want to share and express my gratitude for everyone for coming over to Black Rosie Media, engaging with our content here, and of course, wishing you a very happy and safe holiday season. But we'll close it out as we always do. A reminder to be kind, folks, to yourself. Hey, if you can't take the lead, who else will? Be kind to yourself. And when you have the capacity, share that love and kindness to others. Let's hold fast. Let's stay true. And loud and proud, we will say, let's go Seattle Torrent. We've got 2 games on the front end of the Christmas holiday, and then 1 on the road in Dallas to close out the year. And what a year 2026 will be. But Ava and I will be right back here to talk all about it. Again, follow us on Black Rosie Media. Hit that notification bell to know when we have our next episode. Before Ava, I am Erica. Peace out, everybody.